By day they are a loving couple. The wife wears a $1 million expensive dress. Luxury jewelry is bought directly by the kilo, but at night she is often scolded by her husband. Whenever there is a slight disagreement, the rich man would take it out on his wife. Even so, she decided to stay by the rich man's side, even though her plutocratic mother-in-law did not like her, and even made things difficult for her. Although she was given a new room, but the housekeeper still spoke in a condescending tone, as if Mary was still a humble servant. But at this time, Mary did not know. She had already become a tool of revenge against her mother by the rich man. When the two are alone together, Mike looked coldly at the clothes on the bed. You think you're the daughter-in-law of a rich family now? Don't forget your hands are covered in my sister's blood. You don't deserve to wear these clothes. He didn't know that Mary had nothing to do with her death. The more Mike tortures Mary now, the more he knows the truth, the more he'll love Mary. And the reason he came to see Mary, because Ruth had something to say to both of them. Mike told her she didn't have to bow down to anyone. She only had to do what he told her to do in this house, so that Ruth wouldn't see anything wrong. And so the three of them sat together with their hearts in their mouths. Ruth was the first to say something. After all, their family was well known in the area. Ask Mary what kind of wedding she wants. Ruth was particularly interested in status, but before Mary could say anything, Ruth said again in a sly voice, "Why don't you call all the servants Mary knows?" The implication was that she didn't think much of Mary. Then the butler brought coffee, but not for Mary. Mike scolded her. He told the butler to bring his wife a cup too, and Mike did this to tell Ruth. In this house, Mary had the same status as them. That's the whole point. The more Ruth cared about something, the more Mike would contradict her. But then something unexpected happened. Mike's wedding made the headlines. It was all a conspiracy by the rich girl. It reads, "The famous businessman married the maid in a flash." The rich girl knew exactly what Ruth cared about. Ruth had tolerated it. Now she's completely devastated. It was a surprise to Mike. Mike will find the old man to talk every time he feels bad. For this matter, the old man sees very thoroughly. He did not know why. From the first moment he saw Mary, he felt that this girl was very kind. The presence of Mike is to save him. Although he did not know the origin of Mary, but he always had a feeling. In the end, Mike will definitely love her. These words made Mike think deeply, but what he never expected was that Ruth found Mary alone. The first thing she said was, "Do you really think Mike loves you? He doesn't even trust me. How could he suddenly fall in love with you? And as long as I am in this house, your future life will not be easy. Now I'll give you a choice. Leave here secretly. I can satisfy you with as much money as you want. You can go to any city to live. You can go to any city and live there, and she'll arrange for a car if you leave." All Mary had to do was agree. Ruth told her to think about it. She would wait for her answer, and with that she turned and left. This did make Mary waver. She didn't want to be free, but just as she was about to leave, the necklace fell to the ground. She remembered once again what her second sister had said. Even though Ruth's offer was tempting, Mary finally made her decision. Then the press came to the house. Michael's marriage was the most important news, but Mary was slow to come out. When the maid came to the room, Mary was nowhere to be seen. At this point, Mike looked a little anxious. He was just about to walk into the mansion. When he saw Mary coming out. The reporter did not understand the relationship between the two. Exclaims from the sidelines, "This is the most beautiful bride she's ever seen." And Ruth kept her eyes on the couple. She was waiting for Mary's answer. During the whole interview, Mary was a little distracted, and just as it was ending, Mike offered to take the reporter to take a picture of the two. This was all on purpose for Ruth to see. Apparently, the battle of the gentry is just beginning. Preview of the next episode. Mary doesn't promise Ruth to leave. Instead, she chooses to spend the rest of her life atoning for her sins. She's even actively planning a wedding. Mike is also changing his mind about Mary, but on the day of the wedding, his unhappy cousin rushed in. Accidents happen again. They were bitter enemies, but immediately entered into marriage. They bought a necklace worth $10 million just like that, but not because the rich man loves his wife so much. On the contrary, he wanted to torture her. The rich man tightened the necklace. Obviously, the woman has become the apple of his eye. To the outside world, Mary is the happiest bride, but only she knows how she really is. She has no more status in the family than the maid, and her mother-in-law doesn't even like her. She asked for a simple wedding, to keep it as low-key as possible, so that no one could see the difference. She deliberately brought Mary here, asking what she wanted for the wedding, pretended to be understanding, let Mary talk to the wedding planner. But while they were talking, Mary kept looking at Ruth. Just then Mike came to the side. Mary just said what she wanted to do. She said she would do whatever Mike wanted. When that was done, Mike took Mary to his office. Tell her not to be alone with Ruth in the future. If there is anything that needs to be said to him in advance. And the reason he did this, because he was worried that Ruth would know Mary's true identity. Then he told him to memorize how they met. No matter who asked him, he had to tell him the same story. They met in Africa, and that they fell in love freely. Before he left, Mike told him to go to the wedding tomorrow. Tell Mary to get in shape. Don't always look sullen, but no matter what he said, Mary could feel Mike's hatred for her. Mike came to the cemetery alone. Whenever he thought of his dead sister and father, he was so angry. Whether it was Mary or Ruth were the targets of his revenge. But what Mike doesn't know is that a crisis is looming. When the rich girl saw the news interview with Mike, now she was completely baffled. She lost to a servant. What a coincidence. Her sad scene is seen by her brother, who has nothing to do. But the rich girl had to accept it. Just as she was getting ready for the wedding, the man suddenly received a phone call. He found out that Mike had fired him, even if he was not invited to the wedding. This cut off his money. He had been living living on Mike's charity all this time, so he can't hold his head up. He thought Mike looked down on him. Thinking of this, he made a crazy decision. Since today was Mike's wedding day, he wanted to give a special gift, so that everyone would remember this day. Soon the dignitaries arrived at the mansion. Ruth didn't look happy, so did the rich girl. The man she loves gets married, but the bride is not her. Unlike the two of them, Mike was relaxed, because this is the first step of his revenge. Then Mary appeared in a long dark green dress, instantly attracted everyone's attention. Mike introduced to the crowd and said the happiest thing in his life was meeting Mary. Apparently, the fake wedding fooled everyone there. The rest of the process went very smoothly. Just when the wedding was about to end, something unexpected happened. A cousin bursts in, but Mike was his usual self. He didn't invite his cousin. He told him to get the hell out. But by now, his cousin had gone completely crazy. He took out a gun and pointed it at Mike. You've always looked down on me. You even beat me for a servant. You're the one who didn't give me a chance to live. Today, I have a surprise for you. But to everyone's surprise, when Mike's life was on the line, Mary did not hesitate at all. She chose to protect Mike despite the risk to her life. Looking at the woman who fell in her arms, Mike completely blinded. In this moment, he recalled all the times they met. He was so sure that Mary was the one who killed his sister. She had a chance to escape, but she still chose to return to the mansion. Mike begins to wonder about his life, whether what he did to Mary was the right thing to do. But before he knew it, Mary had already closed her eyes. Teaser for next episode. Mike takes Mary to the hospital for resuscitation. His cousin is taken away on the spot, but Mary's condition is not good. Mike thinks more and more wrong. Finally, the IQ limit went home and opened the computer. The truth is also about to emerge. The girl married into a rich family, but almost became a widow. She defended her rich husband from the gun despite the danger, but she didn't do it for the money. When she arrived at the hospital, Mary was surrounded by people. The rich man's place was filled with people, but he didn't feel lost. Instead, he was determined that no matter what the cost, must be saved Mary. Fortunately, the bullet missed the heart by a few centimeters. This greatly increased the hope of survival, but Mary's condition was extremely unstable. After several hours of resuscitation, Mary was temporarily released from life-threatening condition, but she is still under observation in the intensive care unit. As to when she will wake up, doctors are not sure. Then Mike came to the room. He was worried about disturbing Mary's rest. Gently closed the door. At this time, Mike has long lost the coldness of the past. There was a touch of tenderness on his face. He hoped that Mary would wake up soon to answer the questions in his mind. What a coincidence. The nurse came in to deliver something. He took a look at it. It was the necklace he had given Mary before the wedding, but he still couldn't understand. If Mary was so cruel as to kill her second sister, why would she risk her life to save him? With that in mind, Mike left the room. Obviously now is the most helpless time for him. Seeing Mike's face like this, the old man could guess what was going on. He just said in a deep voice, although I don't know where Mary came from, what really happened with you, but I can see, at that moment she really wanted to protect you. After so many years of living, I understand one thing. Sometimes what you see may not be true. You have to feel it with your heart. This girl is really kind. The old man's words could not help but make him think deeper. Mike did not return to the mansion until late at night. The housekeeper saw this and rushed up to ask questions, but Mike didn't want to talk to him. Just as he was about to enter the house, Mike looked down and saw there were 2 drops of blood. The scene of Mary being shot came back to in his mind, but no matter how he thought about it, he couldn't understand why Mary was on her own. However, at that moment, he saw the picture of his second sister on the table. Mike suddenly became interested. He took out the computer he had left behind. He watches the video of his sister's death again. The housekeeper finds Ruth alone. He reported that Mike had returned. Ruth doesn't say much on the surface. The housekeeper left before Ruth left the room. She didn't know how to comfort her, although Ruth was very concerned about her class, but she was touched by Mary's behavior. In the afternoon, she was worried about Mary's safety. That's when Michael came out of the room, although they had a conflict, but this behavior of Mike's cousin made her feel very uncomfortable. She told Mike that his cousin had been taken away by the police. To her surprise, Mike wasn't very excited. He seemed to have something important to do. Then he rushed off. Yes, it was Mary he wanted to see. It's amazing how fate works. He just walked into the room. Mary was just waking up, and Mike had lost his coldness. Instead, he looked at Mary with affection. This sudden change of heart, Mary was a little confused, but what shocked him even more was that Mike opened his mouth with the words, preview of the next episode. After knowing the truth, Mike is at the hospital 24 hours a day. Mary is gradually recovering. Mike also made an important decision, that is, to set her free. And what choice will Mary make?